Fractions can be tricky, but today we'll learn an interesting way to add them together. In this lesson, we'll focus on how to add fractions that share a common denominator. In order to make things easier to see and develop an intuitive understanding of adding fractions, we will be using some visualization techniques throughout this lesson. Let's take whole numbers like the number 1 and see what happens when we turn them into fractions. Remember, we want to understand fractions better, so we're going to use some interesting visualization to see them. We'll use shapes to show whole numbers, fractions, and to illustrate how fractions are added together. Let each rectangle be a representation of the whole number 1. Let us now divide each rectangle into 5 equal parts. Whenever a fraction has the same number on top and bottom, it equals 1. Think of it like cutting a whole pie into the same number of slices. If you take all the slices, top number equals bottom number, you have the whole pie again, which is equal to 1. These rectangles are divided into 5 equal parts to represent the fractions as shown. Look at our rectangles. The number on top tells us how many of these rectangular parts that divide the whole rectangle are colored in. That number is called the numerator. Look at the number of parts a rectangle is equally divided into. That number is on the bottom and it is called the denominator. Look at our rectangles. We can change the fraction by coloring fewer parts. Now let's only color in 2 parts in each rectangle. Now each rectangle is an exact visual representation of the fraction immediately below it. We colored 2 parts blue and 2 parts green out of a total of 5 individual parts for each rectangle. Now we will work on adding these 2 fractions. The additions of the 2 fractions is equivalent to counting the number of remaining blue parts and green parts of the divided rectangles. Let us now combine the 2 rectangles. Look how we move all the green parts and blue parts from the 2 left rectangles to the single rectangle on the right. That's the same as adding our 2 fractions. By combining the blue and green parts into the single rectangle, we end up with the fraction on the right. That means by adding the 2 fractions to the left of the equal sign results in the final fraction on the right. You just learned how to represent fractions using rectangles, and how to add 2 fractions together when they share a common denominator. In our example, the common denominator is 5, but the good news is that any whole number will work. In the previous example, we showed how to add 2 fractions that have a common denominator and also share a common numerator. Let us now tackle a new challenge. Here we have 2 fractions that share a common denominator, but do not share a common numerator. Pause the video and try to solve this problem on your own. Use the visualization technique to prove to yourself of the correctness of your result. Unpause the video when you are ready to compare results. We got this result by adding the numerators and copying over the denominator. Let us now use the visualization techniques learned to prove the correctness of our result. We start with 3 whole rectangles. Now we divide each rectangle into 6 equal parts. We choose 6 equal parts because our common denominator is 6. Now we color in the divided parts such that each rectangle represent the fraction immediately below it. We color in 4 parts of the leftmost rectangle, because the numerator of the corresponding fraction has a value of 4. Next we color in 1 part of the middle rectangle, because the numerator of the corresponding fraction has a value of 1. And finally we color in 5 parts of the rightmost rectangle because we have 4 blue rectangular parts and 1 green rectangular part. We can now conclude that the sum of the 2 fractions on the left is in fact equal to the fraction located to the right of the equal sign. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, consider leaving a like. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for more amazing videos.